attrition game. Not explosive as Jund Monsters, but a lot more staying power.
Matt looks like he's going to keep. And we're off to the races here. Barry with a temple here.
And there's very little in the way of creatures in this list altogether. There's 4 copies of Corsair Crewfix, 4 copies of Sylvan Caryatid, and after that, the win conditions are just Planeswalkers, plus I suppose Rakdos Return counts as well.
So Matt is going to get to see what he's working with here with the Thoughtseize. Taking 2, seeing a Vraska. Hero's Downfall, bunch of lands. What's that?
New Garruk.
Wow.
In the house.
I like it.
2 copies in Barry's list. And I mentioned earlier, you know, we talk about Garruk making a lot of sense in the green splash black devotion list. They're already in the market for expensive spells and so forth. I thought that it could also just find a home as a random kind of one of in the top of mid-range and control decks. And Barry here at 7-1 with 2 copies in his main deck.
Also a Putrefy down there below the Vraska. But yeah, just caught my breath with the Garruk. You know, we've been waiting to see it all weekend, and finally somebody on camera with Garruk. Matt going to take the Vraska with the Thoughtseize here. And I think the flags are up now from Matt, seeing all of the Planeswalkers, you know, most notably Vraska and Garruk. This isn't a typical Jund deck.
Yeah, this has got to be a mid-range start. That's an opening hand for sure.
Barry with another temple.
Like I said, it almost feels like it's a more extreme post-boarded Jund Monsters list.
And did you say no copies of Stormbreath Dragon?
There are 0 copies in the list.
That is bold.
Well, you know, all your opponents are going to have some amount of spot removal, so the first creature that you play is a pretty big opportunity cost.
And Barry with the Stomping Ground. Matt goes for the Night Veil Spectre, but Barry's got the answer for it.
Yeah, I think it's a little frustrating for Matt there, kind of choosing his line of play there with that Thoughtseize. That Abrupt Decay came off the top for Barry. Not a lot of targets in Matt's deck, but that was really good timing to have an Abrupt Decay.
Barry with the Sylvan Caryatid. And Matt's just going to throw a demon out there.
And he knows that this is just going to get shot down by the Putrefy in Barry's hand, so he was really hoping that the Night Veil Spectre bled out the Hero's Downfall, and that would clear a path for Desecration Demon, but the Abrupt Decay for Barry broke all this up.
Can't Thoughtseize the top of the deck. So Barry with a Llanowar Waste there. Deciding how he wants to sequence this turn.
Would not be another spot for a bad spot for a Vraska off the top here.
Yep.
Barry doesn't have to get too fancy in this matchup. There's not a lot of risk of things going wrong at this point. So just protect your life total and make sure that your Planeswalkers are on stable boards.
With the number of Planeswalkers he has, he's going to be pressuring the Hero's Downfalls from Matt. So finally decides on how he wants to tap his land to deal with that demon with Putrefy, as you said.
And signaling something here if he was willing to tap his... Oh, never mind. That was not a Downfall. That was a Putrefy. I was about to say, if he had a double black there, ask some questions, but...
Matt, no play here on 4. I'm sure he's got a grip full of removal. Looks like he's got a Hero's Downfall and some Gray Merchants.
So these are the type of hands where, you know, he can keep his head above water for a while, killing these Planeswalkers, but Barry's going to be generating some incremental value along the way, and it's just very tough in the long term for Matthew to have a good game plan against this kind of attrition.
Barry opting. Did he just go for the 0 there and just hit the land?
Just hoping for a land. I mean, dealing 1 point of damage isn't that big of a deal in this spot.
And of course, the Downfall from Matt takes it down. Free land, not bad.
This is the tough thing about the way that Matthew's constructed his list. Game 1s in spots like this, the way that Mono Black Devotion pulls itself out is with something like Underworld Connections, when both players are kind of sitting at each other, drawing cards and trading removal spells. Connections is what lets you pull ahead. Hoey doesn't have that. He does have Sign in Blood, but in a long, protracted game, it's just not the same power level as Underworld Connections.
Yeah. It looks like Matt wanting another glance at the new Garruk. Barry letting him take a peek there. And Matt with the Lifebane Zombie.
Surprise actually hit something.
Yeah, got the... What did you rip there?
Got a Sylvan Caryatid out of Barry's hand. Not a lot of creatures in the list.
That should not be in the graveyard then.
So I
And it
think
looks like he fired off a Sign in Blood too there.
Yep.
Matt did.
it looks like we may be very close to seeing Garrick's, I believe, Open Series debut.
I want to be here for this moment. Hoping for no Thoughtseize here. Just be able to slam that Garrick. Matt's going to get in there with the 3-1.
There is another downfall in Hoey's hand, so he's not going to get to go totally crazy, but still.
You got to think he's holding on to that one. All right. Passes back. Now, is there any way Barry can bait out the downfall on something else? We can get this new Garrick into play.
I mean, if Barry has Chandra here, that's very powerful. That kills the Lifebane zombie. May force some sort of response.
It's going to go with Xenagos.
You know, Hoey knows about the Garrick in hand, so he's not going to throw away this downfall liberally. I mean, he's going to wait as long as he possibly can, but Barry has so much power in his deck that he may force the hand eventually.
Right. He's going to start generating some 2/2s. Just so many Planeswalkers. We've already seen 5, you know, including the Garrick in hand.
It's one of those things where, you know, you get in these board states like this where every draw step Barry has, Hoey's response is, ugh. It's just another thing to try to grind through, you know?
Need more Heroes downfalls.
I mean, he's already playing the 4.
Yep.
He can add a lot more than that, you know?
And Heroes downfall of Barry's to take down the zombie. Wasn't quite sure where that was going. Probably the Xenagos.
And this is one of those spots you see Hoey with Desecration Demon in hand. Can't deploy it in the face of the Garrick, so he kind of needs to test out the Garrick a little bit by deploying the Grey Merchant here.
Also, Demon not very good with an active Xenagos.
Another problem, yes.
So, and here's a Grey Merchant, but only for 2 with no Underworld connections for Matt. So.
Yeah, from this spot, all Barry's spells are really high impact. It's really only his mana
There he
creature at
is.
this point.
He's hunting bigger game, folks.
Welcome. Welcome to the Star City Games Open Series.
And we're going to get a Satyr there.
So he just got to drain and shoot down the Grey Merchant.
Which actually... Oh, he gains life equal to the toughness.
Oh, yeah.
Not the... I was thinking about the pre-release Garrick where the loyalty went up when you killed a creature.
Oh, right, okay.
But your actual life goes up. The crazy oversized novelty Garrick at the pre-release, which was actually a lot of fun. So there's the Demon. That Barry just has many ways to deal with.
The Garrick frame is a little odd to me. It almost looks like we have part of our cameras just kind of in black and white randomly, you know?
Yeah, he's definitely crammed in there in that little image area. And there's our first Death Touch Beast. Gonna sack the Caryatid to tap down the Demon. Get in there for 6 damage. Matt's gonna have the Bile Blight.
All right, well, Hoey's keeping his head above water for as bad as this is going. Barry is running a little light on resources, by which I mean he still has 2 active Planeswalkers and a 3/3 Death Toucher, but it's not an insurmountable deficit from Hoey.
Both of which can generate tokens to just throw away to that Demon until he finds a permanent answer.
Uh-oh. A big sigh coming from Hoey, I'm sure.
What Planeswalker do you got now?
Oh, Liliana Vess. Another long time no see. Welcome back, old friend.
Don't mind me. All right. Just going to force Matt to discard here.
It's pretty tough. I mean, Matt's hand has to be all reactive at this point, so Barry going to go upstairs.
Matt, despite the flavor fail, would need in Garrick's wake here. As Matt just kind of...
There are a lot of angles of attack right now.
Not the easiest board to 1-for-1 your way out of.
Now, that said, with Hero's Downfall, to answer Garrick, if he has a removal spell for the token, he can take care of one of the Planeswalkers. Yep. Again, not insurmountable. Things are going badly, but it's not inconceivable for Hoey to win this game.
All right. And Barry throws away the beast to tap down the demon. And there's the downfall for the Garrick. So just 2 planeswalkers now, including the Liliana at 6.
But now Barry's generating the combo. He has a Xenagos to plus, and then a Liliana ticking up.
Plus, at any point, Barry can tutor up a card.
Another issue.
Yeah.
And we know that there's a second copy of Garrick in the deck, for example. So he's got no end of good tutor targets.
We'll see if Matt gets to find out as well. There goes his last card. Barry gonna temple here. All right. Matt taps with the 8/8 demon.
Yeah, Barry selected this line of play. This is susceptible to a removal spell getting drawn by Hoey, but if it stays like this, Barry's going to generate a lot of value here.
You got the Night Veil Spectre here, and Matt is hellbent.
And I think Barry here wants to take a look at the graveyard for the purposes of Liliana's ultimate.
Yep.
There's a lot in there. I mean, it's if Barry gets to that ultimate, that's going to be game over.
All right. So he's made the Satyr. He's gonna plus. So Lily up to 8. Barry got the card in hand.
All right, one more turn. If Hoey doesn't draw a removal spell here, then Liliana's going ultimate.
There's the abrupt decay.
Yeah.
Deal with the Spectre.
That's rough. I mean, now Barry has access to an ultimate, and that's another creature in the graveyard. Yeah, and Hoey's calling this game. I mean, is what?
Not gonna be able to rebound from the Liliana Vess ultimate.
Well, in fact, I think it might have been lethal that exact turn because there's a Grey Merchant plus multiple Night Veil Spectres plus at least 1 Desecration Demon.
Oh, wow.
So I don't even know if it was Matthew knows he's beat.
Yeah.
He actually literally might be dead that turn.
Yeah. Plus the drain and gain. You know.
Yeah. It's a lot coming back.
That was nice to see Garrick.
Oh yeah, Garrick did some good work. I mean, it was a kill spell and sucked up a hero's downfall and a board full of planeswalkers. Nothing to complain about there.
Definitely. Tell us what Barry's got in his sideboard of this already pre-sideboarded.
He's got 2 copies of Devour Flesh, 2 copies of Slaughter Gains, a Rakdos Return, 4 copies of Thoughtseize, a Putrefy, a Golgari Charm, and 4 copies of Storm Breath Dragon. Of these cards, I like the Putrefy for sure. Hoey's, Night Veil Spectres, Desecration Demons. You want good answers to those kind of cards. A copy of Rakdos Return seems excellent here too. Game goes on for a long time. Hoey's got a lot of reactive cards in this deck. Outside of that, I don't know if there's a lot he's going to want to bring in. I think Devour Flesh is reasonable for this matchup.
Right.
Hoey's going to be in 1 threat territory pretty often, especially when Barry's supplementing it with all of his other removal spells.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't go near Slaughter Games. I don't think this is a really good Thoughtseize matchup. So, yeah, I would just... And the Storm Breath Dragons, I think Hoey's probably just got too much removal left in his deck to make that thing very powerful. So I definitely like the Rakdos Return. I like the Putrefy, and I think there's a solid argument for Devour Flesh as well.
Right. With this deck already so Planeswalker heavy, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep.
That's where Matt, he's got another Lifebane Zombie. His Underworld connections are in the sideboard. He's got 4 Duress. With the amount of Planeswalker he saw, got to assume those are coming in some number.
Yeah, and you can also assume, removal spells, Rakdos Return. There's a lot of cards you can duress away, and they're all very good.
Yeah. He's got 2 Drown in Sorrow, the Dark Betrayal, Ultimate Price, 2 Doomblade, and a Freakus Cure. A bunch of removal that doesn't appear to hit anything Barry showed him.
Now, there's a possibility, Barry could very easily have, say, Stormbreath Dragon in his deck somewhere. But Hoey's got enough of that kind of stuff covered with just the way that his normal deck is set up.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to want to dig any deeper, especially because Barry might have no creatures at all, for all Hoey knows. So you need to keep in a little bit of removal to keep Barry honest, but it's very easy to have too much of that effect.
Yeah, I don't even think Matt saw Courser that game. So the only actual creature he saw was Sylvan Caryatid.
Barry's deck has all the looks of something that has Sylvan Caryatid. It's a slow deck, Courser Crufix rather. It's a slow deck. There's so many Scry lands. I think it's reasonable to assume that card is there as well. But again, Hoey saw very little in the way of creatures, and that's because there's very few creatures in the list to begin with.
Right. Just all Planeswalkers all the time. I'm glad I was here for Garrick's arrival.
That was nice. You want to give him a good entrance. I'm glad it showed up in a game that the person casting it won. I'm never a fan when a card shows up for the first time to have its caster lose.
Yeah, just do nothing.
Yeah. Killed a Grey Merchant and ate a Hero's Downfall. Not bad.
Got plenty of value. Plus the life it gained. You know.
Yeah, significant too.
Garrick's pretty cool.
Garrick is, again, the frame is still tripping with me a little bit because, you know, it looks like part of our screen has gone black and white, but it is a cool card.
Gonna get one of those Nerf axes.
Yeah.
The San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah, I did not go this year. I had an opportunity to go down there Thursday, but couldn't quite muster driving down there in Comic-Con traffic, so I passed.
That is understandable.
It is rough getting down there. I mean, San Diego is a city of about 1 million people, or 1 million and change, and it's a fairly large area outside the city proper.
Oh, yeah.
And Comic-Con's over 100,000 attendees. So the size of the city swells by 12 or 13%. It makes for driving not being that much fun.
Yeah, no thank you. All right, so these guys drawing their opening hands here.
It appears as though Hoey has gone to sideboarding in the Underworld connections.
All right.
Which makes sense. It's going to be a slower game. Underworld connections would have been awesome for Hoey, the game one.
And they're both cool with their openers, and Matt needs a swamp go. Got to assume a temple coming from Barry. Yep.
And this is really going to tax the abrupt decays out of Barry's list. You know, he's already got to fight over Nightveil Spectre. I don't know if Lightbane Zombie's still in Matthew's list, but a lot of 3-cost cards that Barry has to fight over, and only so many abrupt decays.
All right. And there's a duress from Matt. He's going to have a couple of options here, a Read the Bones or a Vraska. Bunch of lands from Barry, too.
A pretty solid hand here, and I think Read the Bones feels like the card to me because Vraska is so far away from being a factor, but if Hoey's trying to win the game with Underworld connections, then that makes Vraska pretty attractive.
Yeah, and he did snipe the Vraska from the opening hand last game as well on turn 1, so it's a card he fears. Goes with it again. Plays another swamp and passes.
You just got to hope that there's no abrupt decay off the top of Barry's deck for a couple turns here, and Hoey should be in a pretty commanding position.
Yep. All right. There's Temple of Malice to join Malady. Found a keeper. So Matt, with the Sign and Blood off the top there, has got all kinds of card drawing in his hand. Decides to go with the Nightveil Spectre on 3. Probably saying, if you drew Abrupt Decay, use it on this so I can land my connections.
Also, next turn, let's say Hoey doesn't draw a land. Are you going to use your connections and then be in a ton of trouble if there is no land off the top then?
All right.
Better to cast the connections on the spot where you know you get a little bit of value out of it.
Yeah, important sequencing there. Barry with his Courser. Matt's going to send it in there and get a land, so he's got a land guaranteed. And he gets to see Garrick on the top.
It's coming.
And he's got his demon for you. So now he's got some pressure.
He's trying to speed up the game a little bit. Now, Hero's Downfall off the top for Barry is not ideal for Hoey, although because of the Nightveil Spectre being in play, Barry can't really even leave that card on top of the deck. And now there's all sorts of trouble here. Barry can't really keep this Downfall on top because of the Nightveil Spectre. He also has to be worried about Hoey finding green mana off the Nightveil Spectre because of the Putrefy that Nightveil found the previous turn was turned on. So, causing all sorts of problems here.
What's Barry going to do here? He's going to read some bones. So he's going to make sure that Nightveil doesn't get the Hero's Downfall, I assume. Reveals a Xenagos.
Yeah, this is kind of an awkward spot because of the Nightveil.
So he's going to take them both. And there's a Llanowar Wastes.
So he's at least found a land here to play off the Courser. It's also important for Barry to play it because Llanowar Waste turns on the Putrefy that Hoey has. So
don't want him to have that. So he's going to gain a life there. Show another Vraska off the top.
Man, Barry has to hope that Matthew does not find green mana here because that Nightveil starts getting unleashed.
Yeah. Rips a swamp there from Matt. Looks like he's going to sign in blood. Getting a Mutavault there.
He's found a Thoughtseize as well. And this is part of the problem that Jund Minrange has sometimes. The hands that don't have creature removal are often very slow to the table. And Barry spent the first 4 turns of this game really doing nothing at all. And Hoey's definitely capitalized.
Yeah, Hoey's definitely got the board pressure here. See how he wants to sequence the rest of this turn, if he wants to use that Thoughtseize or not.
Seems like a fine Thoughtseize turn here because Hoey's mana is likely to be tied up doing other things going forward.
So he's moved to the attack step, and Barry's going to just throw away the Courser here to tap down the Demon.
Yeah, I don't think he can take that shot at this point.
Yep.
And that Courser's doing very little.
Yeah. So that's going to go ahead and put that Vraska under the Night Veil.
Courser no longer in play, top card rejection.
And it looks like Barry revealed the Chandra when he didn't have to.
No major harm there, but
Right. Just more information from Matt. So he's got a grip there, some connections and some Mutavaults. He's going to take a peek here. All right. So Barry's got a couple lands, and then Garrick, Xenagos, Courser, Hero's Downfall that he's aware of.
and keep in mind Hoey knows that the top card is Chandra, which is no help to Barry here. So Matt's just going to take this Hero's Downfall and try to win the game on the Desecration Demon plus his leftover attackers.
Yep.
Barry can't even really establish the Xenagos lock on Desecration Demon because Hoey now has a Mutavault and a Night Veil Spectre that he's able to hit with.
Yeah, that Night Veil, that if it hits a green source, it's going to be in business.
Yep. But it's not even clear to me that Barry can beat a 2/3 flyer blank at this stage. That still might be too much.
With the texture of his hand, yeah. All right, so he's got a Temple here. What line of play does Barry really even have here? He needs to just rip removal spells?
Yeah, basically. He needs to find removal spells and have Hoey find nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, if Hoey doesn't have Hero's Downfall and Barry's able to chain together some removal spells, his Planeswalkers are fully capable of carrying the day here.
Definitely.
It's just going to be hard. I don't think Barry has enough time.
Yeah, because the token is most likely going to get 8 for the Demon. That's assuming Matt doesn't draw a removal spell here.
Yeah.
Yep, there it goes. Fire up the Mutavault. It's going to kill that Xenagos.
Yeah, and Hoey's basically just replaying the turn.
Yep.
Xenagos just did pretty close to nothing here. Just
He's going to
fogged,
duress
basically.
again. So he's got the choice between Garrick and Chandra.
I think this has to be Garrick because the thing you're worried about here is Barry chaining together some removal spells and then getting to one of his power cards. So Chandra really provides no help to Barry here. You can leave him with that card, but if Barry top decks very well, you can imagine that Garrick coming into play.
Looks like Matt suited up that swamp, the Underworld connections. So now he's got his own form of card advantage on top of pressure. Barry here with the Courser and the Chandra that we know of. There's the Chandra. Should reveal the top card there.
Yeah, and it looks like Barry tapped in such a way to take a point. Not that that's a big deal here.
He's going to gain it back with the Temple. So he can choose to scry away that land.
And Barry's operations here are getting a little bit on the sloppy side here. I think he has the look of a man who knows he's probably doomed in this game.
Yeah, he needed to find some removal spells and didn't quite find them. And now Matt's got his card advantage engine going on Underworld Connections, which he's going to elect to use here.
In fact, several forms of card advantage now. Night Veil is kind of an implied card advantage here.
Looks like he's got another Duress in hand.
Picked up a Bioblade too, so he can attack with his Mutavault here.
The Courser's just going to feed the demon again.
Yeah, Barry's playing this game in such a way where he's really leaning on drawing a removal spell. He's throwing away all of his resources to keep this demon pinned down as long as possible.
Which with, the 2 from the Night Veil, he's still got 1 or 2 turns here viably to find some running answers.
Yeah, interesting here. Hoey electing not to attack with the Night Veil Spectre because it's essentially a scry for Barry. He knows the top card of the deck is a land. He knows there's no help in Barry's hand. So if he just allows Barry to draw for a turn, he draws a land, he has no help and dies to the Desecration Demon.
Right.
So kind of an unorthodox play, not something you see very often, but Hoey finding a line there that left Barry with really no outs, and we're going to be going to a 3rd game.
With the game 2 handshake, with 1 game to go here.
Nothing wrong with some good sportsmanship.
Yeah. Looks like a good guy.
Can do no harm.
Yeah, I did get to watch a couple of minutes of his matches throughout the Swiss. So,
though I will say that I've had the game 1. I've received the game 1 handshake after I've lost game 1, and that is unacceptable conduct. It's like, dude, the match is still going on, man. You know.
Yeah. This isn't over yet.
Yeah.
Don't shut the door yet.
Like the pitcher doesn't go up to the batter and shake his hand after throwing strike 1. That would be considered bad form. But the handshake after a loss, it's a little awkward, but nothing wrong with some good sportsmanship. That's fine.
It's well played.
Yeah.
Matt going to take a look at his sideboard again here now that he's seen a little bit more of Barry's deck.
It wouldn't surprise me if he was going to remove, if he was going to change anything, it would probably be removing more of his creature removal, because Barry's shown that he has pretty close to nothing.
He really did just see, how good those duresses were. Had Barry found the removal, those Planeswalkers would have been able to start doing something.
Yeah, and in fact, the first card that got duressed away was a Vraska, which would have been a huge help in that game.
Yep.
So.
And Matt has taken a Vraska turn 1 of his, game 1 and game 2 here. So
it's a pretty powerful card against Mono Black. It's hard for the game to go in such a way where that card isn't effective against them, as long as you make your land drops.
Yep. Reusable Vindicate's pretty good.
Yeah.
So Barry will be on the play this game.
So the Planeswalker count in this list again are Liliana Vest, 2 Chandra, 2 Vraska, 3 Zendikos, 2 Garruk. The big cost of building this way is that, of course, you can't play with Domri. That's the Planeswalker you lose in this. But the upshot is that you get a lot of very flexible, very powerful cards.
Yeah, it was nice to see Liliana game 1 there, too, threaten the ultimate, which, prompted the concession.
Yes.
Getting to see a little bit of everything this match. You don't normally see.
That's one that we haven't seen for a while. Even when that card debuted in Lorwyn Block, the first wave of Planeswalkers, didn't see a lot of play. I mean, showed up a little bit in control mirror matches as a 1-up in sideboards and stuff like that, but not a card that saw a lot of play. But given the popularity of Mono Black Devotion, that's a deck where you can easily incorporate Liliana.
Yep.
And it's a card that's effective against Mono Black as well. I think we might be seeing a lot more Liliana, at least for the next 3 months, than we really saw when she was initially in Standard.
Even the Esper control list throwing one of her in there. So
no, I mean, being able to, it's an ultimate that can win the game after you Supreme Verdict, and that's definitely a deck that can take full advantage of the minus power of Liliana too, because you can get Elspeth or Supreme Verdict or Sphinx's Revelation as the situation requires. Those are your 3 most powerful cards, and they're all powerful kind of in different spots. So the flexibility, being able to go get those as the situation dictates, is really nice too.
So we shuffle up here. You can see Jeff Hoagland in the background there. Started 6-0. Did take 2 losses to fall out of contention. Looks like his match over there. But Feline did win her round, this round, against Red White Burn.
Not an easy matchup. Although Feline sideboard, she was ready for that matchup. I mean, her Mono Black build, I think, is as well suited to be creature decks as you can really get. 2 Pharika's Cures and 2 Drowned Sorrows in the sideboard. A lot of removal in the main deck.
So we have a shot of, Peter Tragos comes out ahead. We have three players prominently noticed on our leaderboard in the top 8 here.
Absolutely.
But Barry's not going to give it to him.
And it's the biggest one for all these competitors. It's big, but for Freeline most of all, she's really had her struggles in the Standard Opens. She's a player who, in my opinion, has a real shot of making the Players Championship as one of the 2014 invites at the end of the year. And it's not going to happen unless she starts cobbling together some reasonable finish in the Standard Open. I mean, she's going to have her good legacy finishes, plays a lot of high tide. She's probably going to top 8, you know, one of every 5, one of every 6 times. She's going to pick up a lot of points that way, but it's not going to lead to the Players' Championship until she starts piecing together consistent performances in Standard. And it looks like, at least for the next couple weeks, she's found a deck.
Can't go wrong with mono black.
No.
All right, we got our players looking at their opening 7s here. Barry mulling it over.
Hoey has a very intimidating demeanor at the table. It's not on purpose, but just sort of his posture and his facial expressions. It's
I believe I've heard it described as the pro wrestler.
Yeah, he's got a very pro wrestling vibe to it.
Yeah.
That's a good way of describing it.
I enjoy his delayed passing of the turn, where he just kind of holds his hand out there and then just glides it over.
Yeah.
Very animated character.
He looks like a guy who would wrestle stiff. You know what I mean?
So Barry's going to get a little Thoughtseize of his own.
And that's leaving Hoey with not much of a hand here at Bioblight, which isn't very good against Barry's list. Really only in there, I think, as a concession to Xenagos, because that comes up sometimes. And he has his Night Veil Spectre, but Barry with a lot of removal in his list for that.
And Barry got the Thoughtseize from Matt. But Matt had no play after that, so Barry's going to go with the Temple here.
And this is the pacing of the game. You know, it's early, of course, but things looking very good for Barry so far. Although this Thoughtseize potentially makes his hand much worse.
All right. So Barry has a much more early-based hand. You know, this game, Abrupt Decay, Courser, Golgari Charm, a couple lands.
Well, the big issue here now is Hoey has the option of taking the Abrupt Decay, and that leaves Barry with no answer in hand to Night Veil Spectre.
Mm-hmm.
So Barry, I think, correctly Thoughtseize the Thoughtseize with an answer in hand to Night Veil Spectre, but the game might have shifted quite a bit here if Barry can't find an answer in time to the Night Veil that's now freed up in Hoey's hand.
Yep. Which, as we saw last game, provided significant advantage.
It's a runaway. I mean, Smith doesn't have a lot of answers to it, and if Hoey finds lands, then the cards that come off of Barry's deck are incredible. I mean, it's Planeswalkers and Rakdos Returns. Now,
oh yeah,
all this is predicated on Hoey finding one of those lands in the first place, but if Barry can't kill it, Night Veil is going to be in play for several turns.
And he does take the Abrupt Decay. All right. Barry with another Temple as opposed to getting, I believe his lands were all coming to play tapped, so couldn't get the Courser in anyway. But
yeah, a slow hand.
That's the risk you play, though, when you run all these Temples.
Oh, wow.
And there's a Lifebane Zombie, which will nab the Courser.
And Barry's starting to run low on resources. Now, the Read the Bones here is going to be a big help.
Yep.
Help him build back up here. And he has Golgari Charm, which can kill the Lifebane Zombie, so this is not the end of the world, but Barry's resources, just his raw resources, are getting depleted here pretty significantly.
He was able to get rid of the clock, so let's see what he can do if he refills his hand here with Read the Bones. That got that Night Veil and Urborg in his hand hiding there.
The Bioblight we know about.
Barry has to Read the Bones.
Yeah, he can't just allow this Night Veil Spectre to go uncontested. He's got to find some sort of answer.
Finds a land here. Another Temple. So he got the Scry pretty deep this hand here.
Yeah, and it looks like he's been able to find a Vraska here. So assuming he has land number 5 set up, he does have an answer.
And if Matt just plays the Spectre here and Barry can land the Vraska, that's a pretty good edge.
It's a huge swing. And Hoey with no Mutavault here, no way to tax a Vraska for the time being.
Let's see if Barry got it. Does not appear. That's a Blood Crypt, so I mean he can do it.
Yeah, he has the mana. I don't know what alternate line of play he's considering here. Maybe he has some other removal for Night Veil Spectre.
Found a replacement courser. There's a hero's downfall, and he's going to shock himself with the blood crypt.
This must mean that Barry has found an abrupt decay.
Abrupt decay has to be, because I don't like showing the top card when my opponent's got the Night Veil. That's the one thing I don't like about Courser, is how much information it gives your opponent.
Yeah, I mean, it cuts both ways, but for sure.
So, I mean, we got to expect the abrupt decay from Barry here.
Although Hoey has picked up a duress.
There it is.
Which means that at least he has an answer to Vraska.
Yeah. Barry will take a life there.
I think this game is setting up to be, as it often is, when Mono Black Devotion squares off against another slower deck, a top deck war.
Yeah.
We're setting up for that kind of game. And quite frankly, I feel that Barry's list is favored in that kind of battle. It's just got more haymakers.
I would agree. You've got Garrick Apex Predator in your deck.
Now, Hoey has a lot more card drawing, so he can get an edge that way.
Yep. As he finds a duress off the Sign in Blood here. He's going to get a Vraska. Now Barry is empty-handed. The downfall in hand. He's got a Xenagos on the top.
It's a big draw.
Yeah, start attacking with that Courser.
This feels like a spot where Hoey really needs to find underworld connections.
Yeah, that's got a handful of land there. And the Bile Blight. The Lifebane Zombie shows the already known information of Hero's Downfall. So Matt down to just swamp Bile Blight, which doesn't answer anything right now on the board for Barry.
I like using the Hero's Downfall here because Barry's mana is going to be tied up next turn casting Xenagos, and his mana might be tied up for a while as far as we know, depending on when he draws. You don't want Hoey to get good value off of Duresses and Thoughtseizes off the top. So even though, you know, Lifebane Zombie is not the most threatening creature in this spot, I just don't want to get caught with cards in my hand in this sort of situation.
Exactly. Barry gets to use the land off the Courser there, gain a life, fire up a Satyr, bash in for 4. That goes to 10, rips another swamp.
And unfortunately, this gets to a spot now where even connections isn't that big of a help because the life total is starting to become a factor.
Yep. And the mana and time you have to invest doing so.
Felt like a turn or two ago, connections could have taken the game over for Hoey. Now it's much more in question if even that card gives him a lot of help.
So Barry gets the land we already know of. And there's a Thoughtseize on top. Not the best, but with the pressure he has. As for Matt here, do you have to fire off this Blight now, or do you just try to get greedy and get another one next turn?
It looks like he's going to take the hit. It's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think he has to. I think because he can still draw Underworld Connections and use it next turn and not die because he has the Bile Blight to protect himself. It's worth hanging on for one more turn.
Barry gets rid of that Thoughtseize with a Temple. What'd Matt get there?
Looks like a Thoughtseize for Hoey.
No dice.
Again, he still gets to struggle on for one more turn, but he's going to have to draw extremely well to get out of this.
Because at this point, Sign in Blood's turned off.
Connections is pretty close to turned off.
You get one card off of it, and then you have to be perfect. Not an ideal spot for Matt Hoey.
Yeah, I think Hoey right now is going through and seeing if there's any combination of draw steps that help him at all here.
And he passes back. And there's a Mizzium Mortars for Barry on the top.
It's another kill spell for Night Veil.
So with removal for Barry coming next turn, if Matt does find this miraculous sequence, you know, there's the
I think Barry
Blight.
there is better served by just attacking first is a small thing, but the odds that Hoey's hand is multiple removal spells is pretty close to 0 because he's just shown nothing over the last couple of turns.
Yep, Matt shows the land he drew, and Barry gets the win.
Yeah, a little bit of a flood out there for Hoey. You know, again, it's small potatoes, but I think what's more likely in that spot? that Hoey has a Bile-Blight in his hand he's been sitting on for a while, or
Right.
that he has multiple Doomblades and Ultimate Prices he just hasn't been casting for the last couple turns, it's almost certainly the first thing. So
Yeah.
I think you can send with your team first. If Hoey has 2 removal spells in his hand, all right, you make a Satyr post-combat, you're good to go for it again the next turn.
Right.
But the most likely scenario is Bile-Blights in his hand, and then you can make your Satyr post-combat have a little more juice going in the next turn.
Might as well have that extra body.
Yeah, again, it's small stuff, and I understand the instinct of, like, I have a Zendikos, it makes a haste creature before combat, I'm just making my haste creature and attacking.
It has haste.
I think,
Use it.
I think in that spot, Barry is supposed to just attack first, but not a huge deal regardless. A pretty commanding win in that third game for Barry Smith, who's now X1 and looks like to be in a good position to make the elimination rounds.
There.